Matt Stinchcomb joining us. Matt, this type of the year, we're 3 weeks out there. It seems like the same questions come up. We've seen the polls today. I don't think any of this is really very surprising, but as someone who looks a little bit deeper sometimes, as we get ready for the season, what are some of the things that you are really honing in on? What are you really curious about?
Well, I mean, more than anything else, the new faces in the conference, right? Because it seems like the top end of the conference is established, and maybe they're right. You know, last year the race in the East was thought to be tighter between Georgia and Florida, and it played out exactly the way a lot of people anticipated. It does seem as if Georgia should be separate and apart, probably in the East Division. The West Division, it's kind of a pig and a poke with Alabama once again, where you're going, I guess they're going to still be good.
Right.
But everything should point, when you look at what they have returning or what they don't have returning, and then what they have that's different as far as key positions on that coaching staff. We're not talking about a new tight ends coach. We're talking about a new offensive line coach, a new offensive coordinator. These guys that are coming in.
But their wives were roommates in college.
Well, that's helpful. And I'm sure they'll have input in strategy and scheme. So maybe there'll be overlap there. I mean, it really is. There's some familiarity there. I find that to be surprising, actually. I'm actually surprised that if we're ignoring the past, which we should, because college football is guaranteed turnover, you cannot retain that roster. It's not going to be the same this year as it was last year, even with super seniors in the age of COVID, that somehow Alabama still sits atop the poll among the coaches, which, as we know, I'm not sure these coaches are going blind scrutinizing where they're putting their votes, but it is interesting that they're still number one.
Yeah, I mean, it's one thing if the media poll does that, but you expect coaches to maybe understand the predicament. But I wonder, though, and here we are. We've been in the age of Saban for some time, but we're now at DEFCON 1 level where it's just automatic. As an analyst, you still have to look at what you think you're seeing and what you know. How do you wash away the fact that it's Nick Saban that you're trying to analyze?
Yeah, well, I mean, if history is our teacher, if anybody's earned more than a few foul balls, it's Alabama. I mean, you think outside of Ohio State, they don't even have to win the division to make it to the playoffs. Those are the only two programs that have been able to pull that off. Alabama's done it a couple of times, even harkening back to the BCS era, maybe even ushered in the age of college football playoffs. So they've definitely earned the benefit of the doubt. However, and coaches will say this, and only because it's true, that was last year, and that was last year's team. So when you look at it from an objective perspective, who should be the number one team in the country? You could easily point to who is sitting at number 5 right now and say, really, when you look at what's coming back and when you look at the proximity of what they have based on how they played last year, how do you not have Georgia up there? Well, it's because Georgia lost in 17 in the national title to who? To Alabama. Right. And then they lost to who in the SEC championship in 18? Alabama. But that was 4 and 5 years ago now. So it's interesting that still can bias the way we perceive these teams today, and they're different teams.
But we're selective. I was just interviewing somebody about his coaches list and talking about Mike Leach. Why was he number 12? He said, well, look what he's done at Texas Tech. And I'm like, that has nothing to do with what he's doing now, but I think we decide to use whatever we decide to use in making our analysis. Oh,
well, there's no doubt. We take shortcuts, right? Otherwise, to run everything to the ground objectively, gosh, that takes a lot of time, right? Can't I just look at what happened last year and be like, this guy was good last year, or this guy was terrible last year, and he's the exact same person with the same exact output this year, and so now I can move on to whatever the new variables are. And so to me, these polls, we can say that they don't matter, and from a literal standpoint, they don't. But we all know that there is this predictive bias that I said this team was good to begin with, and so when they play each other in week 3 or 4, that's now a ranked win. And now that has some type of artifact in my awareness going forward as a voter, as even the selection committee members, where you're sitting there and you're looking back and, yeah, we thought that team was good at the beginning of the season, and maybe by the end of the year they were just okay, or maybe we just kind of overplayed it. But there's no doubt that polls like this have an influence. They have to, but that's the human input to this entire process. So it's always interesting, and Alabama's sitting at number 1 once again.
I remember a couple of years ago when Alabama played Florida State in the first game. It was 1 versus 3 when Jimbo Fisher was still at Florida State. Alabama won, Florida State lost a quarterback. By the end of the year, they were hanging on to be number one, to have a winning record. And a lot of people said they don't. Alabama doesn't deserve to be in the playoffs because they don't have a good win. I was like saying, I thought they beat the number 3 team in the country, but we just decided to throw that out.
Yeah.
Where in Alabama's case, they're now getting the benefit of the doubt. So bringing it back to Georgia, I don't think it really matters where they're ranked. They're playing the number 2 team in the country the first game.
So true. Well, and that would be my argument now is that we're going to do this poll again after the first week, right? Why not put them at number 1? You're going to find out just how good they are right now in this snapshot because they're going to play what is thought to be, currently anyway, the number 2 team in the country. If anything else, it's great for TV. It's great to hype up the game, 1 versus 2 in week 1.
Hurt the game.
And so to put them at 5, to me, it's sitting there going, you're going to find out. You're not even being that speculative, really. It's, you know what, they should be good, and we'll find out in week 1. Let's put them at 1. Put them at 2. Put Clemson at 1.
Thank you for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.